Does anyone have a love for fertilizers? What an odd question. You buy a fertilizer and you have plants in your house. And you go, oh, I'm going to make use of these fertilizers. So I'm just going to now over-fertilize my plants. Is that fair onto the plant? So the plant has to now bear your love for fertilizers, which you now keep on feeding the plant with excess fertilizer. Or you have a plant in your house and the leaves are wilting and you just can't stand leaves that are wilting. So there's a constant need to water the plants every day. So every day you wake up and the first thing you look at the plant, the leaves, and if they're a little bit drowsy or gloomy, you've got to go over there because you feel that agitation, the kitchen, get a mug and pour the water or get your fertilizer from downstairs. Would that be a peaceful life for you? Every single day you wake up like this, you either have to fertilize your plants or you have to water them? No. So now, what Krishna shows us is that if you make your decision by your mere what I want and what I don't want, what I should have and what I shouldn't have, what should be and what shouldn't be, your likes and dislikes, then you cannot make the right decision because that decision is based on your fancies rather than the objective need of the environment. What the environment needs, like the plant, is water and doesn't need to be watered every day. But because the person is driven by these excess likes and dislikes, these binding, like I have to water, I have to use the fertilizer, it actually, on the surface, it looks like you're doing something good. You're watering the plant, right? But if you look at deeper, you're not really doing that. You're acting out of an agitation. You're acting out of a sense of powerlessness. Like I have to attend because it's pulling me to fertilize the plant. So same thing with Arjun. Last week we said in verse 23 that he was really going by likes and dislikes too. And we can see this throughout the story. When he went in the forest, exiled, he went to Svarga to get his divine weapons from Indra. Now, this can be a symbolic for going to the world and doing something that is based on anger. So he had anger towards the Kauravas. He felt mistreated. It was unfair. And so that anger or that resentment for somebody caused him to go out into the world and pursue and get things. So this is one way of going about things. Then when he's at the field of action, when he's confronted with a very important decision, that is to act and do what has to be done, then he looks at the other side and he says, I've been attached to you for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And I get it. It's hard when you're attached to someone that long, when you saw their face for so long, and you have to make a decision that goes against what you've usually been doing, which is protecting them. Now you have to make a decision and say, what you're doing is unfair and it needs to stop. It's very hard to do. So because Arjun couldn't do that, he looked at the other side and now he's acting from raga, from a sense of familial love. Very common in families where a mother, for instance, is confronted by another parent, and the parent says to the mother or the father, your child is bullying my child in school, or your child is bullying in school. Now, in that moment, the mother or the father has two choices, and that will really depend on how mature they are. Number one, they can either say, no, my child would never do that. Because if I admit that they do, then what does that say about me as a parent? I failed as a parent. So this means the parent is acting out of a like for protecting their self-esteem rather than looking at the consequences that if their child continues to grow into a bully and all they receive is protection as a result of that, then what kind of a child would it be as an adult? Furthermore, they're going to scar an innocent life of someone else who is then going to carry that scar and contribute that scar to the society. So now this is what's called a wise parent. So now, if you go back to Krishna, what did he say to Arjun? He said, look, in both cases, you are acting from a sense of likes or dislikes, what has to happen according to your vision. Krishna says both of them are wrong. To fight is wrong, and not to fight is wrong. Interesting. So then what do I do? It's very confusing to say this because there's only two choices. This is how we go by black or white thinking. Fight or not fight. And then you have to choose, right? This is black or white. Krishna says you're in the wrong paradigm. Because to fight or not fight, he asks one more question. Where are you coming from when you say don't fight? Where are you coming from when you say fight? Fight means to go and act. Not fight means not do anything. Where are you coming from? What is important rather than fighting or not fighting is the intention behind your action. So what Krishna says is that instead of looking and being pressured by my own personal fancies as to what has to happen, what is my criteria for making the right decision? Crucial question. What is my criteria for making a right decision, which you're confronted with every day? Krishna says very simply, do what has to be done for the larger whole. Look at the larger whole, Arjun. You have a leader who's running the kingdom of Hastinapur, and this leader is psychologically unhealthy. Is it fair to have a psychologically unhealthy leader running the house, running the kingdom, running the corporation, running the business? Does that sound reasonable and healthy? Arjuna considers and says, no, of course not. Krishna says, why not? And Arjuna answers, well, because if the leader who governs people under him or her is unhealthy, then what kind of causes would their unhealthy actions create in the society and for everyone else that's working underneath them? Unhealthy. That's how it is, the hierarchy. Hierarchy is unhealthy. Whatever the unhealthy hierarchy does, it slips through cracks and it finds its way in the minds of all those who are underneath their leadership. So Krishna says, instead of making a decision based on your personal investments, this is the hardest thing to do. How do you make the right decision? What most do is they make a decision based on personal investment. What Krishna says, it's not about your personal investment, where you are invested in. You have to think about the larger whole. That is the right way to make a decision. And every time you think about the impact that it's having, that it's not about me, it's not about my fertilizer, it's not about my dislike for wilting leaves, it is about the plant. Does the plant need watering? No. Therefore, the plant doesn't care about my fancies. Then don't water the plant. Does the kingdom need an unhealthy leader or a house? Absolutely not. Then go and do what has to be done. It's not a question of fight or not fight. It's just looking at the larger cause. What impact is it having to me, to those who I'm encircled by, to the company, to the society? What kind of impact is it having to my son or daughter? According to that, I make the right decision. And every time you do this kind of impact thinking, decision-making process, that means I'm thinking about the impact that it's having on society, that alone starts to evolve your thinking. That's wonderful. You get a benefit. Why does it start to evolve your thinking? Because you are forced to think about the network. You're forced to surrender that person who thought they were in control and they had sort of these, this power to mold the world according to their likes and dislikes. The truth is, you never had that power in the first place. You had a relative amount of decision-making process, but never as much as we would like to believe. So whenever we relinquish this journey of having to make a decision to appease me, you relinquish that limitation that you feel upon yourself, that limitation that there is a me here who has to make a decision and I have to be right. See, that's the irony, right? So a person wants happiness. How does a person get happiness in the usual sense? Control more variables, get, likes and dislikes fulfilled. But Krishna says totally opposite. The more I do that, the more I really just isolate myself, the more I disconnect myself from what the world really wants. And then I find myself in conflict with the world, which is asking for something else, whereas I want something else from the world. And that conflict produces a situation where you just can't win. Therefore, I want to give you some examples in the real world of some people who have applied this decision-making process. Take Nelson Mandela. He was in jail for how long? 27 years, right? So he got out of jail 27 years because he was, against the apartheid regime. And he was appointed to be the president of the country. I was in South Africa at this time, so I witnessed the whole thing. And what did he do? Did he walk out with a sense of resentment, to, avenge his, period of 27 years in jail? No, because he knew, even though I have every reason to resent being kept behind bars for simply calling out the unfairness of the apartheid, even though I have every reason to resent that, I'm not going to play the game of revenge, because that is going to divide the entire South Africa into two. And that's not going to be good for the people. Good thinking. So he put aside his own hatred, his own dislike, and he thought about the larger order of the country, and he went by that. Then you have Gandhi. They usually call him Mahatma Gandhi, although I take the word Mahatma out because Mahatma means great being. If you want to call Gandhi Mahatma, then you also have to call Mahatma Thomas Edison, Mahatma Nikola Tesla, Mahatma Einstein, Mahatma, yourself, Mahatma, your children, Mahatma, because everyone's a great being in some ways or the other. So we'll just call him Gandhi instead of Mahatma Gandhi. So Gandhi, in the was it 17 or 1920, was at his peak of his independence movement. And I don't know what the movement is called, but he had there was a mob of protesters. They killed about 27, if I remember, police officers, 22 or whatever, 27 police officers died. And this was the movement that Mahatma Gandhi started. Now, what happened afterwards? Mahatma Gandhi immediately canceled out his movement. He said, I'm going to put an end to this movement because I stand for non-violence. So even though putting an end to his movement basically reversed years of progress and momentum that he built with it, he still stood for something much greater than his own fancies for an independent India. This is, again, something that is, what Krishna teaches. Putting aside one's own hatred or like for some big cause. And if I look at the situation around me, I make a firm judgment and I change my course of action to suit a larger whole rather than my so-called movement. So far, all of these actions are noble because they're thinking about the impact of the person, of the whole, the larger order. But here's a question. Are these actions constituting what's called karma yoga? Before you answer, remember, karma yoga is prescribed by Krishna to help you in your spiritual path. According to your understanding of what karma yoga is, are these actions, making the right decision, thinking about the larger whole, is that constituting the word karma yoga? Feel free to speak.
I'll say not yet, because they haven't factored in moksha as being an outcome, so that karma yoga is more to purify the mind so that the mind is ready for the understanding.
Excellent, David. Okay.
If there is an attachment to the result of your action, then it is not karma yoga. But if you have no attachment, you are ready to accept whatever happens, you do your best, that is karma yoga.
Okay, I will correct you there. That is part of karma yoga, but it's still not karma yoga. Okay, that makes up karma yoga, but it's still not karma yoga. Okay, Ashish?
So I think this is more of ethical actions, making right choices, more like being generous. Karma yoga would be more if you view all of this as Ishvara's history and bring in that all-pervading intelligence and have appreciation for that in all of this, then it becomes karma yoga. Otherwise, it's just more like psychological thing of doing right actions.
Excellent. Okay, Reiki?
Yeah, I was going to just add, but I think Ashish has already done that. Just that it's got to be dedicated to Ishvara. All actions, if you want them as a karma yoga attitude, need to be dedicated, and then you have no attachment to the results.
Okay. Okay, so that's a more complete definition of karma yoga. And Meenakshi?
I think it is an action towards karma yoga. You don't have to be aware of moksha. You don't have to be yearning towards moksha. You're doing what is right. You're doing with your limited knowledge. You are acting, and that will show you the way towards the bigger, larger moksha goal.
Yes, it is good. It is a path towards, it's leading towards karma yoga. So what I want to make clear is, where is the tipping point between a noble action where you are accounting the larger whole, you are trying to, not make the mistakes and refining your responses and being responsible and thinking about your potential blind spots and asking people for help and improving, working on your mind and undoing your psychological, emotional pressures and looking into your responses and refining your stories and reframing your, your views about people and yourself and everything else. You're sincerely doing that. Now, where is that tipping point where all of that nobility suddenly turns into karma yoga of chapter 3, Bhagavad Gita? And the answer is, several of us have already mentioned, is every action that I do from now on is noble, because maturity causes you to, of course, refine your responses. This is natural. But I'm no longer doing these actions to improve, to be a good person, to go to heaven, to seek for validation, to be a good person. I'm doing these actions because they will help my mind reduce what's called subjectivities, jiva srishti. Personal ideas, personal stories, personal narratives, personal, pressures, emotional gaps that still have to be filled. It will reduce all of that by the mere participation in the world, by the mere refinement of my reduction of my personal likes and dislikes, and more doing it towards the larger whole. All of that will make my mind much more clear. What we call, it will put my mind in touch with Ishvara Srishti. Ishvara Srishti is this world that is asking you what needs to be done. This world that is without any stories, without any labels, the world as it is, untouched, unbiased, unlabeled. Just the objective world that you live in is what I have to see. Because if I don't see that objective world, and I'm in my subjectivities, my own stories, then you just cannot possibly come to the truth, because the truth lives in the objective world. The truth does not live in my subjective world. If I have the subjective idea that people are there to use me, look at this, people are there to use me, people are not nice, people are evil, and yet Vedanta says every person is just an expression of the Lord. Came with ignorance like anyone else, like you. You didn't know anything when you were born. They didn't know anything when they were born. They didn't choose to become a criminal. Does anyone go before they're born, today I'm going to sin, I'm going to be criminal, I'm going to drink, and I'm going to be with parents that are not really, smart. Does anyone do that? No, nobody does that. You just come into this world and you go, wow, I have to figure it all out by myself. And so like this, you make your mind a lot more objective. And this objectivity is what we call, the evolution of a human being, or Ishvara Srishti. I'm in touch with the Lord's world. And when I'm in touch with the Lord's world, that makes your mind self-knowledge friendly. That is what makes it karma yoga. What makes it karma yoga? My actions are not to get me to heaven. My actions are there to purify my mind, evolve me emotionally and intellectually, so that I can appreciate this world for what it really is, Brahman. I want to know the truth, and I want to live the truth, and I want to be the truth. I want to embody the truth, and I want to know nothing but the truth, because there is only Brahman here. And that is my ultimate aim. And for that to happen, you have to have a certain kind of emotional maturity and intellectual discernment to be able to hold that vision. Otherwise, it's just an on and off constantly. And you say, you know, I had it yesterday, today it's not there anymore. So how do you actually make it stay that even if you're in the greatest pain of all, it's still there? It's just evident all the time. That is the kind of mind that you need to develop. And that is what karma yoga is there to motivate you. So this means karma yoga does not ask you for more actions. It just says, hey, stop and just ask, why am I doing this action? And your answer is, because, Lord, I want to know that your truth and my truth is one. They're not two different things. It is one reality alone. That's why. And I'm not going to stop until I figure it out. And Lord, you're going to help me because you put me on this world, in this world, and I want to know you. And because I'm asking you for the highest knowledge, for the only purpose that you have designed this universe, you cannot not but give me. You see, if you ask the Lord for power, fame, beauty, reversal of aging, lots of, girlfriends, boyfriends, you are destined to fail. Why? Because that is not the purpose for which the world or the universe was designed for. It was designed for one purpose alone. And if you go against the purpose for which the world was designed, that shows up as conflict, that shows up as emotional trauma, that shows up as a constant sense of dissatisfaction. When I align my purpose, devote my energy, time, and effort to the very purpose for which the universe exists, which is to figure out my truth, then you find yourself having so much more resilience, so much more patience. You're almost like a shock absorber now. Whatever pain or whatever discomfort comes your way, you say, thank you. This is there to help me learn about myself. This is there to help me look at myself. Where do I need to work on myself so that I can see this as Ishvara and not just another thing that is worthy of being thrown in the bin. That is why karma yoga works so well, because now every challenge in your life is an opportunity to evolve you for the sake of knowing your nature and the Lord's nature as one. Therefore, no longer do I sit down and say, oh, my life is not working out. I say, great, my life is not working. Let's make it work. What needs to happen to make it work? Got all the resources today. You got more time and energy and resources today than ever before. What possible excuse do you have nowadays? Before, look at this, before you had to walk from north to south, 5,000 kilometers or maybe 3,000 kilometers to find a guru. Would you do that? Would you do that nowadays? Hey, let's find, let's fly to Mars or let's fly to the moon, and the guru's up there to the moon. This is what we had to do only a few hundred years ago. Today, we have it so easy. So there's no reason not to succeed in this journey. You can do it. In fact, you will do it, because that is what the times you're living in. One of the best times, best chances for this opportunity, which is this life alone. I know there's this whole thing about, next life, but this too, you've been saying for how many lifetimes? Next life. So one life, you just have to stop saying that. No more next life, this life. At the same time, there is humility and saying, look, ultimately, I don't call the shots. Ishvara holds the key. So that is also part of the, part of maturity. Okay. So that is why karma yoga is there. Now, I want to provide a quick distinction between karma yogi and a jnani. A karma yogi, do they have Doership, a sense of Doership? Yes or no? That means I'm still in.
No.
Yes.
No.
Oh,
Okay, let me ask again. Does a karma yogi is not enlightened yet. Does a karma yogi have a sense of doership?
Okay, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Still, yes, a lot less than a non-karma yogi, but still has a sense of doership. That means they're still acting as I. I am acting because I am different from that which I believe I'm different from that which I want, right? What I want is Brahman, and I'm different from Brahman. Therefore, I'm still an actor. So I'm still a sense of a doer and an enjoyer. So a karma yogi has doership, but it's a lot more healthy than the one who is a non-karma yogi or the one who's just in a world. What about a jnani? Doership, yes or no?
No.
Okay, why not? When you say no, can someone explain in a short sentence, what does it mean to say a wise person does not have doership?
Because he knows that the ultimate doer is only the Brahman. Nobody else does anything.
Not that the wise person knows the ultimate goal. They're already living that as Brahman. So there is no goal for a jnani. Okay.
I will be.
Someone else?
Thy will be done.
Thy will is already done right now. So there is no will in the future for a wise person.
There is no I in him to identify as a doer or an enjoyer.
There is an I, but what is the direct recognition of that ahamkara I?
Ahankara.
That's an ahamkara. And what is the ahamkara in Vedanta? We call that mithya. So not that there is not an I, there has to be an ahamkara. If there was no ahamkara, then look at this. If you're a wise person right now and you have no ahamkara, then when your body is hungry, what would you do? You start feeding your friend. Hey, how about that? I'm hungry, let me feed you. And you're like, hey, feed yourself. Yeah, but there is no self anymore, then it doesn't work like that. So the ahamkara has to be there because the ahamkara, the sense of I, still gives a sense of individuality, that I am over here and not over there. However, the wise person recognizes that ahamkara is incidental. It's not intrinsic to my nature. That's the only difference. Okay, Ashish?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. So wise person still has ahamkara, but they know that that's what not they are. They have realized their true self. And when I say they know their true self, they see ahamkara as another manifestation of Ishvara. It's another concept which has come into being because of their true self.
Excellent. See, it's a very good point that Radhika has also brought up. Your ahamkara right now is a very long thought in the waking state. You have many thoughts in the waking state. Do you not? You have many thoughts in the waking state. What is one of the longest thoughts that you have in the waking state? Is it I'm hungry?
I am.
Good.
I am.
Actually, yes, excellent. Is it I'm hungry? Is that what you have all day long? Some people
No.
actually, so that means they have to resolve that first. Is it I am short?
No.
Or
Is it I am the doer?
okay, good, because I am the doer is another way of saying I am. Okay, what Meenakshi said. Okay. So what is the longest thought that is effortless throughout your waking state? You don't have to put effort into it. It's a thought. I'm not talking about Brahman right now. It's a thought.
I am the body.
I am the body. But do you have to say that? That I am. Do you go throughout the day, I'm the body, I'm the body, I'm the mind, I'm these thoughts? No, you don't. I am. That I am, which lasts in the waking state, that is called the waking ahamkara, the waking ego. That waking ego that has all sorts of complexions, like I am a woman, I am a business person, I am a student, I am a worker, I'm a plumber, I'm an accountant. All this I am, that's the waking sense of I. It's a very long thought that does end in moments of meditation. It does cease in moments of savikalpa samadhi, but it's the longest thought that you have. Now, what happens to that thought in the dream state? That waking I thought? It's displaced by the dream I thought, isn't it? Because that dreamer I has a very different idea about itself than the waker I, doesn't it? The waker I says, I am rich. Oh, I'm rich. You know, I've worked so hard and I am rich. What happens when the dream comes? To all that money? Do you even know that that I is associated to money in your dream? No. That means that I only knows that it's associated. That means its sense of identity, its sense of size is in relation to all the things that are associated in the waking state, for the I thought in the waking. The I thought in the waking, I am big based on the children that I have, based on the money that I have, based on the knowledge that I have, based on the health of the body that I have. Where is all of that in the dream state? Gone. Because your entire waking I thought is displaced, moved aside by the dreamer I thought. And that dreamer I thought now has another complexion. It says, I am, you know, whatever you are in a dream, right? Whatever you're, maybe a cook, or maybe you're a pilot now, maybe you're a crocodile hunter, something else. And now that entire dreamer I gets once again displaced by the sleeper I. Now that sleeper I has no thoughts at all, but it's still another identity. It's an identity without any thoughts. So the constancy of this I thought in the waking, the constancy of the I thought in the dream, and the constant repetition or the cycling of the I thought in the deep sleep, they constantly keep on cycling. One displaces another, another displaces the other. The waker displaces the dreamer displaces the sleeper displaces the dreamer and the waker, constantly. But then if they're constantly displaced, then why are you relating to me right now? Why are you relating to the waker I? Why are you relating to the dreamer I? And why are you relating to the deep sleeper I? Why are you relating to all of that? If they, look at this, if they have, listen to the question. If they have no connection to each other, the dreamer I has no connection to the sleeper I has no connection to the dreamer I, and the deep sleeper or the waker has no connection to any one of them, then what is that? The fact that you're relating to all three of them, what does that say then about you in this moment?
The self is constant.
That I'm not that I.
Can you see the logic? If the I of the waker has no connection to the I of the dreamer, and yet here you are in this state of waking right now, perfectly relating to all three states, there must be something different about you that is free of the waking, of the dream, and the deep sleep. That is the only possible way you'll be able to relate to all these three states. Because if you were as good as, if your I was as good or isolated to the waker, then the moment I say, hey, do you dream? What would you say? No. Hey, do you sleep? You would say no, because your eyes will be totally, your eye will be totally different. But here you are relating to all three. Thus, there must be that which is the fourth, turiya, which is other than the three states. That's why we call it the fourth. Don't think it's a state. It just means it's other than the three. If you had 5 states, then you wouldn't call it turiya. You would call it the sixth. If you had 8 states, you wouldn't call it the, then what would you call it then? If you had 8 states, you would call it the 9th. So don't think that turiya is some different state. It just means it's other than the 3, which is the waking, the sleep, and the deep, and the dream. Okay. Let's talk about tranquility of a karma yogi, or the relative cheerfulness. The tranquility of a karma yogi is based on what? Attitude, values, prayer, meditation, making the right decisions. What is the tranquility based on? And it's relative. It's changing for the karma yogi. What about the tranquility for the wise person? Is that changing? It's a tricky question. You have to now ask, what tranquility are you talking about, Andre? Are you talking about tranquility at the level of the changing instrument, which is the mind? Or are you talking some other tranquility that I have to understand, or I'm yet to understand? I cannot be talking about the mind tranquility, because the definition of a wise person is the one who recognizes there is no connection between the changing instrument that experiences tranquility and myself. So I cannot be thus stuck to that instrument. Therefore, that tranquility has no impact on me. Therefore, when it comes to a wise person's tranquility, because that's what the scriptures say, they say the wise person, has tranquility, has, ananda. What are you talking about? Are you talking about bliss of the emotions? You can't be talking about bliss of emotions. You can't be talking about the mind, because the mind is designed to experience pain when painful situations come. It's designed to experience pleasure when something pleasant comes. It's just how it is. Therefore, for the wise person, their tranquility is based on knowledge. And what knowledge is that? Is that no matter what happens, whether this instrument is tranquil or not, the mind is tranquil or not, ultimately it makes no statement about me. About me, the awareness in whom the tranquility of the mind comes and goes. Therefore, in this way, the tranquility of the wise person is based on the recognition that no matter what happens to the instrument is merely incidental. It has no bearing on self, on me, as the awareful presence. Okay. What about freedom from the karma yogi? What kind of freedom does a karma yogi have? Absolute or relative? Relative freedom, right? Not absolute freedom. What about the freedom for a wise person? Absolute. Why absolute? Because freedom, see, sometimes your body, for instance, is not really, healthy. Can you consider that now freedom from health? No, you can't, because you're part of the body. You think you're the body. How can you say you're free from health if you are taking yourself as the body? So as long as your eye is in the body and the mind, you cannot say you're absolutely free. This is a common mistake. People say, look, I am free. Are you? Or is it just a statement that a person is making? You cannot make a statement until it's true. Otherwise, it's just an affirmation. We're not talking about an intellectual statement that's made and says, I am Brahman. Are you? Have you doubtless knowledge about that? The person says, no. In that case, your journey is still going on. You're in the process of growing clarity. So don't make a statement, I am Brahman, when in fact, you still see yourself as a jiva who is one day going to die, who is still looking for a solution. When moksha comes, you know it. No more seeking, no more refinement, no more kind of, looking for that, that special knowledge. It is done and dusted. There's no more. Okay. Now, the next question comes, important. How do I put all of this into use? Help me to, what practices does Krishna advise to bring my mind and make it knowledge friendly, to bring my mind closer to the truth and ultimately recognize the truth once and for all? What practices does Krishna advise? And this will come in the next verse, 24. He will also enumerate the vision of a jnani. So I'm going to chant verse 23, which we've done last week and just completed. And then I'll chant verse 24, which we're now going to embark upon. Verse 23. Gata sangasya muktasya jnana vasthitta chetasa yajna yacharatah karma samagram praviliyate.
The karma of one free from attachment who is liberated whose mind is rooted in self-knowledge, who performs for the sake of daily yajna, resolves totally.
Okay, so this is what we have just finished. So therefore, the action of the one who is free from this fancies of likes and dislikes, which we've spoken about, they are relatively available. Their mind is available to pursue self-knowledge. And why is it pursuing self-knowledge? It is performing it in what way? In a yajna, does a daily yajna. That means performs it in the spirit of karma yoga. Okay. Now, the next verse is going to show us two things. How do you put this into practice if you are in a process of growing clarity? Or another way to interpret is, what is a vision of a wise person? Brahmarpanam Brahma havihi Brahma gnau Brahmana hutam Brahmaiva tena gantavyam Brahma karma samadhina.
The means of offering is Brahman. The oblation is Brahman, offered by Brahman into the fire, which is Brahman. Brahman indeed is to be reached by him who sees everything as Brahman.
So we'll split this verse into two parts. You can either interpret this verse as a practice of a karma yogi or a vision of a wise person. So I'll undertake the first section. It's an attitude of a karma yogi. So how do we usually use food in the modern world? Is it a means for, for appreciating Ishwara's, order of network and connections and all the wonderful generosity that's been given to you to have this plate to have this food on your plate, all the microbes and the worms in the soil that, sacrifice themselves to make that soil fertile, and all the rains and the clouds and the sun and the air and the time itself that sacrificed itself to make you healthy for one more day so that you can figure out the truth and reach the highest? Or is it something that you count your calories and you just kind of connect with people and talk chit chat? Which one?
Entertainment and distraction, I would say.
Entertainment and distraction, yeah. So this is the glory of food nowadays. Okay, if that is your case, then, I'm sure you may get some benefit, but you can get a lot more benefit if, according to Krishna, it says that food itself, something so mundane and daily, can be used as your, just a wonderful, spiritual remembrance of what really matters, of what is the ultimate goal, of why you are really here, and the incredible generosity that Ishvara has been giving you for millennia, so that you can just have this food on your plate right now. Therefore, this verse also shows you that does the verse say, the food doesn't matter, the giver of the food doesn't matter because it's all just Maya. The ladle with which the food was, given to you doesn't matter because it's also Maya. The eater of the food doesn't matter because it's also Maya. Nothing really matters here because it's all just illusion. Is this what the verse says? No, it doesn't. Not at all. It actually expresses gratitude. It does not dismiss the world. It thanks the most ordinary experiences as that very reality. That means it's not. That means everything becomes an expression of Ishvara. And you don't have to just apply this to your hunger, even to anxiety. Does anyone feel anxiety? Of course, everyone does. Stress. So even stress itself, something so mundane and common, instead of saying, oh, here I am having anxiety, that too can be an expression of Ishvara. Ishvara, you are right here in the form of my anxiety. You're showing me that something needs to change. Thank you. If I listen to you and I'm intelligent about it, I will come to move forward and make the right decision. Thank you, Ishvara. So there's no place or no chance in the most mundane things where you cannot not appreciate the presence of the Lord. In all things.
Yeah, when I'm eating, I often think of all the farms, or try and imagine where all the farms were, where the food was, and imagine it growing. So it's like it's just a expression of the complex web that we live in.
Yeah, for me, it's a simple practice of, as this is going to become a part of me, let it be put to best use to produce whatever I could.
How beneficial might it be that every time you eat, once or twice or 3 times a day, is an opportunity to at least one thought bring this knowledge to you? How might that sculpt your mind within 1 year or 2 years? I know the benefits of this so much that there is not one time that I eat without a little prayer. And in that prayer, sometimes people ask me, what do you pray before eating? And I say, what David said, I think about the rains, the sun, the farmers who I will never meet, the fertilizers, all the companies and all those inventors of the fertilizers who you will never meet, and the soil and the trucks, the delivery trucks and the quality inspectors and the packers and all the oil that was extracted from the ground to wrap that food. So much you can bring to your mind in that moment and recognize it's just all Ishvara there for me. Thank you, Ishvara. Ishvara, thank you. And every time you do this, you slowly start to make your mind more Ishvara friendly, more Ishvara compatible. And that through time, it really adds up. And, you know, and just have a really, you know, easy time relating with Ishvara. Because our minds is so used to thinking about what calories and, you know, all sorts of, you know, small things. So it takes some effort to slightly change your regime, but the benefits are vast. And the benefits, you know, they start to have a compounding effect. Every time you think about the Lord, about the connections, about the web, that starts to grow in your mind. It starts to think vaster and vaster.
For me, yes, that sort of approach in intention helps to bridge the gap between myself and outside and separation, because all things, you know, you put in your mouth, it's a separate thing. All experiences are a separate thing. But when one thinks about the interconnectedness of everything, that separation gets smaller and smaller and smaller as time goes by.
Yeah, excellent. The gap between that habitual separation that we all started out with, that vasana or that habit or whatever you want to call it, that through the repetition of bringing Ishvara through anxiety, through food, through the generosity of air, and through waking up, or whatever it is, whatever you practice it, that gap starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you start to live the vision. And so this is such a, see, look at this approach. Is this approach about cheating? You know, moksha solves everything. Is this what the verse is saying? Huh? Just know Brahman, and suddenly you don't have to think about Brahman anymore. You don't have to bring Ishvara into your life anymore. Is this what the verse is saying? It's not saying that at all. It's saying, because this verse is also the vision of a wise person. The vision of the wise person is not that once I understand the reality, automatically I come to see everything as myself. That's not what the vision is about. It's a growing clarity. You've used your God-given instrument, thought it through every single time through mundane activities like eating, and that has sculpted your mind slowly, that when the knowledge takes hold, you're thinking like that automatically. And then people say, oh, you must be thinking like that because you're enlightened. No, I'm thinking like that because I've thought like that for a long time. You see the difference? So we have to let go of this idea that moksha is this magical fix, that you suddenly become this cool person that's got it all right, that doesn't make any mistakes, that thinks that everyone's now holy and divine. This is not the case. Still, work needs to be done.
I feel that this approach, this closing of the gap, it gives a richness to life. It's the fullness rather than the dismissal through moksha or you know, that's nothing, that's dismissed, it's not real, it's not happening, all that sort of thing. That's a great emptiness. And it might relieve a bit of anxiety to start with, because we all think like there are always things that we'd love just not to have. But I think you can't live like that.
That's such a brilliant point. I love what Allison's saying, is that this, right, instead of just negating, which has an initial provisional purpose, right, to neti, there's a specific course, for that. But eventually, even neti becomes unnecessary. Now you really start to bring things into your life. You start to recognize there is nothing to negate here. How can you negate Ishvara if all that is here is Ishvara? What are you going to negate? So initially, I needed to negate because my identity was in the body. So I needed to negate. I'm not the body. I'm not the thoughts. I'm not the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, right? Vijnanamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. I'm not all these things. That has a purpose. But then you find yourself, once you make that distinction between your true self and your body and mind, now you start to ask the question, what is the truth of this body and mind? The truth of this body and mind is nothing but Brahman, which is myself. And so you start to close that gap, as Ellison said. So let's look at this verse now in the light of a wise person. So far, we looked at it as a practice. But so suppose you've assimilated this vision, and this verse will now show you the vision, an assimilated vision of Advaita Vedanta. And what Advaita says is that there's one reality alone. And this one reality is, in the Vedas, we call it Brahman. Brahman just means infinitely big. That means there's nothing that limits it. There's no place where Brahman is not. There's no time where you will not find Brahman. There's no place where you can sort of isolate Brahman and you say, right now I don't have it, and one day when I go there or come to a certain time, then I will have Brahman. So right there, that's a very important teaching. That means right now, if there's only one reality, then can you be excluded from that? You see, if the mind's very qualified, that's all it has to hear for moksha to take place. It just owns up. Oh, I thought this reality I have to attain, that I have to reach, that I have to, have. But the mind just doesn't want to own up, does it? This is the problem. It doesn't want to own up because it keeps on saying, yeah, but, yeah, but this is true. I'm not excluded from Brahman. Yeah, but. Now, this yes, but is the problem. That's the only thing that is denying you from the recognition and just owning up to the truth. So really, we're just helping the mind just to, drop these beliefs that keep on saying yes, but. Because every time you say yes, but, what you're really saying, yes, no, I got it. However, there's one more objection. And that objection still makes you as though different from this one reality. But the teaching will slowly start to collapse that. So this one reality we call Brahman, which comes from the word root brh, B-R-H, which means infinitely big. And the nature of this Brahman is, we say it is of the nature of Satyam, existence, which is of the nature of Jnanam, or awareness, which has no second, which is thus Anantam. What it means to say there's no second is it means that there is never a time or a place where you will find two existences. Existence is always existence. For example, suppose I have, look at this, shirt. Does a shirt exist? Yes or no? Shirt is. What is the shirt made of? The cotton. Does the cotton exist? Cotton is. When I say is, it just means it exists. Does the yarn, because this, cotton is really just yarn, does the yarn exist? Therefore, yarn is. Now, this yarn is made of molecules. Do the molecules exist? Therefore, molecule is. Now, molecules are made of atoms. Therefore, does the atom exist? Therefore, atom is. Now, atom is just proton, neutron, and electron. Does the proton exist? Therefore, proton is. Does the neutron exist? Neutron is. Does the electron exist? Electron is. Now, electron, proton, neutron is made of subatomic particles. Do the subatomic particles exist? Therefore, subatomic particle is. Now, what can you find all across? When I said subatomic particle, have I excluded the shirt? No. Can you see the subatomic particle while looking at the shirt? No. So when you go to a shop, do you say, I want a bunch of subatomic particles which have put themselves together into a bunch of atoms, which have put themselves together into a bunch of molecules, which have put themselves together into a yarn? Yarn has been sketched together using weaving machines to create what we call cotton. Cotton has then been, nicely fabricated into a what's called a shirt, which is worn by a human being. Is this what you say to the cashier? And this will be great. I mean, have you lied to them? You have not. You just told the truth. You told the absolute truth. You made it a little bit very complex for the ordinary mind, but all you did is you just mentioned all layers of what we just, for simplicity, say shirts. So if I look at this shirt, considering, why do you call this a shirt? Suppose I cut the, what do we call this? The arms away. Can you still call it the arms? Can you call it a shirt? No, now you call it, what is this without the arms? What is this, a curtain? So it went from a shirt into a curtain or a handkerchief or into a tablecloth by simply taking away the arms. So then why do you call it a shirt? On the basis of two arms? What kind of business is this? You take two arms away, you no longer call it a shirt. Now you call it a tablecloth. But when I negate the shirt, that means I negate the two arms, have I negated what the shirt is made of, which is the yarn? Not at all. If I negate the handkerchief and I now add more cloth onto it and I make it into a big curtain, have I negated once again the cotton, which the shirt, which the handkerchief, and which the curtain is made of? Have I negated it? No. All I'm doing is I'm taking the cloth, or I'm taking the cotton, I'm taking molecules, and I'm rearranging them, and I'm giving them different names. Does this make sense so far? That means the underlying substance I am not touching. I'm not touching the cotton. When I scramble this up and I cut the arms away, I'm not touching the cotton, am I? I'm only touching the name which the cotton was called a shirt. That's all I'm doing. I'm taking the arms away, thus the cotton is no longer a shirt. Now the cotton is just a tablecloth. Now, if I can't find the shirt, why can I not find the shirt? Someone tell me. Is this really a shirt? Why is this not a shirt? I mean, you call it a shirt on the basis of two arms, I get that. But why is this actually not a shirt?
Because you have transcended shirt and you're looking at cotton.
Okay, good. So now, but is this really cotton?
No. I mean, if you go further down as you were going, so ultimately, if you, with your example, it fascinates me that there is no substance, like there is no shirt. Similarly, there is no cotton as well, and there is no molecules as well. Then where is the real substance?
Okay, good, good. So let's stay with that thought. So look at this. I can't really find a shirt, can I? Why not? Because there's just basically cotton in the called a shirt on the basis of two arms. Can I really find a cotton? No, because cotton is nothing but yarn. Can I really find a yarn? No, because a yarn is nothing but molecules. Can I really find the molecules? No, because they're just basically atoms put together. But what can you find all the way from the shirt all the way down to the molecules? Does the shirt exist? Therefore, existence remains. Does the cotton exist? Therefore, existence remains. Does the molecules exist? Therefore, existence remains. Do the atoms exist? Therefore, existence remains. So what can you now infer from this entire inquiry? Existence in the form of atoms, existence in the form of molecules, existence in the form of yarn, existence in the form of cotton, existence in the form of shirts. So what is the only one commonality that is for sure that I can tell about this? Because I can't say for sure that this is a shirt, can I? I can't say for sure that this is cotton, can I? But what can I say for sure about this?
Existence.
It enjoys existence at every level of analysis. That means at one level, I can't find a shirt, I find cotton. But both at the cotton and the shirt, I find existence. Now, no matter how many levels you go down from this shirt all the way down to the smallest, what's going to remain always? Existence. Because if existence didn't remain, then you wouldn't be seeing a shirt. So that means no matter how deep I go, whether we are at subatomic particles or even something that we're going to discover 5,000 years from now, it doesn't matter how small it is, there has to be existence across the entire assembly, because if there was not existence at one of them, then at this level, you will not be seeing a shirt. So summary, if there's one thing for sure, this enjoys existence. Okay. Therefore, what is the nature of Brahman? It is that which is of the nature of existence, which is of the nature of awareness. Now, let's go into awareness. Is there awareness of the shirt? Is there awareness of the cotton? Is there awareness of the molecules, if you could see them? Awareness of the atoms. So that what is the second factor that you cannot negate across the entire analysis? You cannot negate awareness, which is why we say existence and awareness has no second. There is no second, there is no separate existence that you can find. It's just existence in the form of shirt, existence in the form of cotton, existence or awareness in the form of atoms, and so on. Pankaj.
The thought crossed my mind. When we are talking of shirt, we are saying it is a form. And what it is made of is the content. So between form and content, are we saying that form is more important than content? Because there is no real content in the ultimate analysis. It is only form that exists. No. Whereas our Vedantic teaching says the other way around. What it says is that it is the clay which is more important rather than the pot.
Yeah, exactly. So no, the form is less important than the substance, because the substance needs to be there for the form to exist. So let's look at this in a very simple order. What's the substance of the shirt? Let's just go slowly, little by little. What's the substance or the material cause of the shirt? It is the cotton. What's the material cause of the cotton? The yarn. What's the material cause of the yarn? The molecules. The material cause, what makes up the molecules? The atoms. What makes up, what's the material cause of atoms? You understand? So in other words, that means just to see something, whether it's a shirt, whether it is the sun, whether it's a tree, whatever it is, the mere fact that I see it, that is there, shows you it must enjoy some kind of content or substance. Now, look at this. Very important. If this shirt resolved infinitely into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it just kept on reducing to something else, and it had no final substance, would you be seeing a shirt? Suppose, right, this shirt depends on the cotton. Cotton depends on the, yarn. So it's a mithya. It's forms within forms within forms within forms. If it's just forms within forms and it doesn't end and it infinitely goes into forms within forms, would you have something which you call a shirt?
Maybe it's just appearing as shirt if there is no something, anything real substance, like you're saying. If there is no real substance, then the fact we are seeing is seeing the shirt means that it is appearing as shirt.
Okay, but what is appearing as shirt? Because
that's the final reality.
Final reality. So that means if I just keep on negating the forms negating into cotton, cotton into molecules, molecules into atoms, and I cannot arrive to any final substance, then you will not be seeing a shirt. Therefore, there has to be a final substance. Otherwise, you will not be seeing a shirt right now. It doesn't matter how deeply the shirt resolves into, there has to be a final material cause because of which you're saying shirt right now. So what Vedanta says is, it takes over. It says, science, you have got it down all the way to subatomic particles, and you're trying to figure out the God particle. We get it, but you will never get to the God particle because the God particle is not a form. You're trying to figure out something which is formless, but you cannot use a machine to figure out the formless. Therefore, why do you need Vedanta then? Because if science is going to give you the final material cause that makes up everything, that makes up your thoughts, that makes up your body, that makes up the shirt, just think they were stuck at the shirt. We're talking about everything now. Then if science is going to give you the answer, then why do you need Vedanta? Why do we need this class? Because science cannot give you that which is the final cause. That's why you need Vedanta. So Vedanta now comes in and says, wait, we will give you two more realities that will help you figure it out. And if you look at the bunch of atoms, for example, how do the atoms come together to form molecules? Who does that? Do they do that on their own? Because atoms are inert. Is there like a little brain in an atom that says, I'm going to now put together two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, therefore I've got water? Is that what an atom does? No. So just the fact that an atom is able to put itself together with another atom, and then you have like a molecule like H2O, it shows you there must be some presence of intelligence for that to be put together. Does this make sense so far? Things cannot put themselves together unless there is an intervention of intelligence. Very simple. So if the tiniest of the tiniest particles put themselves together into subatomic particles, and those subatomic particles put themselves together into atoms, atoms put themselves together into molecules, molecules put themselves together into a cell, cells put themselves together into a limb, limb puts itself together to form a synergistic working functional human body that further has connections to its environment, such as the air, such as the food, such as the sun, such as the plants. What does that then imply about the maker of the instrument, of the cell, of the plant, of the sun, of the air, since considering it is all interconnected like a web? What does that say about that one creator, because of which atoms, which are generally all around the same, because just periodic table of elements, are being put together to form what we call a functional working world? What does that say about the world then? Is it a random putting together?
Intelligent.
The one thing that is functional, that has a connection to something else, unless it is built by a maker which has knowledge about the sun and how the sun is going to work with the plants, and how these plants, what vitamins are they going to produce, and when are they going to grow, when are they going to stop growing, for how high will the grass grow? Did you ever wonder that? Who says to the grass, stop growing after 10 centimeters? It's just a bunch of atoms. Can you find a brain inside atoms? No. And yet atoms put themselves together in a blade of grass, and a blade of grass knows how long to grow. Therefore, what does Vedanta say? If you look at the entire world, I can't find the shirt, but I can find the yarn. I can't find the yarn, but I can find the going downwards. What is it? What else can I find throughout the entire assembly? Not only existence, what else can I find?
Time.
Intelligence. Look at the tree. A tree, a bark of tree. It's you look at it as a rough assemblage. It's disorderly. But you look inside the tree, it's a gorgeous assembly of intertwining threads that looks like the braided rope. And the threads are so well angled together to make them just bendy enough so that the wind can blow and not break the tree, and just hard enough so that the tree doesn't collapse on itself. How do you do this? So while I look at a tree and I say it's disorderly, you know, the bark is disorderly and it has no order. If I look into the bark, I see a gorgeous assemblage of intertwining threads of cellulose, and cellulose further, you know, made of beautifully made molecules, which is really cellulose, and then atoms and so on. How do you do this? There must be the presence of intelligence. Therefore, Vedanta comes in and says, wait, science, ask yourself, how do you put all these things together? It can't be random, because there's only just order here. What you see, while you see this order, if you look deeper, there is nothing but order. How do you do this? There has to be presence of intelligence.
I just wanted to make a comment on what we've been talking about, the existence of the shirt, and then you know, it being dependent upon the cotton and the molecules and atoms. That it's like layers of reality, and the upper layers are more dependent upon time, lower layers are relatively less. But at the end, Brahman is completely independent of time, not constrained by time. That's what it heard.
Yes, that's where we're getting to. So we're taking it one step at a time. Yeah.
Okay.
But that is the big vision, yeah. So the whole point is just to kind of lead the mind through the process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I really like the intelligence aspect. Thank you.
Yes. So let's just a little bit more intelligence, because see, if you just stay at Brahman, then there's nothing to appreciate, because you cannot appreciate consciousness. Consciousness is formless. To appreciate consciousness, there's the presence of consciousness in whom the mind is appreciating consciousness. So if you just leave it at Brahman, then okay, great. You know, what is there to appreciate? So you have to look at the world a little bit deeper than you used to. So for example, let's look at one level of form. What do you see? You see, for instance, a great amount of disorder and chaos. But if you look at that form from a microscope, you see what? Once again, a nice, very well put together assemblage of, threads and molecules and atoms. One good example is embroidery. Do you know embroidery? My mom used to make embroidery with, what do they use? Cotton, right? And they make a fantastic, she made, these great, wonderful pictures, hung them on the wall. And now, if you look at embroidery, it is, you're inspired, you're touched by it, you have an emotional kind of connection to it. But if you look at it closer, if you zoom in, what do you find about embroidery? All the threads are very well interconnected. You didn't really see those threads, did you? But when you zoom in, you just see a bunch of threads with different colors, all perfectly aligned in a certain way that if you look at those threads from a bigger standpoint, you are touched emotionally. But when you zoom in, what do you see? You just see chaos. If you really zoom in into those threads, you see chaos. Oh, someone's showing me embroidery here. Now see this? See, Sheila is showing embroidery. Good. Now suppose you zoom in even more. What will you see? You just see a bunch of threads all garbled up, jumbled up. But if you zoom out, you see the web.
Yeah.
If you zoom out even more, you are now suddenly emotionally touched by the beauty. Look at this. Suppose you were a microbe. Suppose you were a small jiva, and you are like an insect. Your world would be incredible right now if you lived inside embroidery. You will just see like this world of complex, it will be like heaven, like, wow, look at these threads, I can climb, I can jump. So your world instantly shifts from this world to another world just by reducing your size. Then you become a little bit bigger, and then you see the threads, and now you become a philosopher. Oh, it's all interconnected. All the embroidery patterns are all woven together, and there's a nice tapestry that creates this big, gorgeous whole picture that I'm emotionally touched by. And then you zoom out even more, and then you just see, just embroidery. You just see a picture, and you go, oh, nice, really nice. How did you do that? Your reality constantly changes from what standpoint you look at it from. That's amazing.
Beautiful.
You don't have to go to heaven to realize heaven. It's right here in this world. You just reduce the size of the jiva and you're in heaven instantly. So why am I showing this? To show you the relativity of the world. Where you see this order, you only actually see order. It's just that your eyes are not programmed to see order, because your eyes can only see the very surface things. But underneath them, if you could see, you would realize disorder can never win over order, because there is no such thing as disorder. There is only order. I only see disorder when I look at it from a certain standpoint. When I get closer, if I could, you would be amazed by the order of everything in this universe, from the bark of a tree to the rock, to the way that your organs are built, to the way that your life is put out, to the way that who you're surrounded by. You would see, wow, there's only perfect one-to-one, unmistakable, infallible order all around me that I have missed out because I couldn't see it. And yet here it is. That order is what we call the beauty, the vastness of Ishvara. And it is all that is here. Only order. Let's do a little mind twisting exercise, Alison, I know. Suppose you have one object traveling in space. Could you tell at a certain speed? Could you tell what speed that object is traveling unless there is a different object traveling at a different speed? So now, is that object really traveling? How do you know it's traveling? No. Okay. Now, now look at this. Suppose you have two objects traveling in space, and you put a third object that's traveling at a different speed from these two. So these two are traveling at a different speed from this one object. Now, how would you know how would these two objects decide whether they are moving closer towards the third object or the third object is moving closer towards them? How do you decide that? I guess the majority vote would decide, because the two always decides over the one, right? They're in the majority. So even your decision is completely relative, because mithya means there is no absolutes in this universe. The only absolute you can say to is Brahman, which we will get to. So even the two objects say, hey, wait, are we traveling towards this object, or is this object traveling towards us? Well, we don't really know. So we're just going to decide, and we're going to say that we're traveling towards the object. Okay, that's our vote. That's called diplomacy. That means it doesn't really matter who makes what decision. All that matters is just the vote. The greater vote makes the decision. People settle with that. But is that all that you see? Absolutely not. Because the world is relative. And in a relative world, you cannot conclude a definitive conclusion. The only conclusion you can conclude is that this shirt exists. And what else can you say about this shirt?
Independent reality.
It is pervaded by intelligence, because I can't find the shirt, I can only find the cotton. I can't find the cotton, I can only find the yarn. But if there's one thing for sure, the yarn doesn't get put together by itself to form a shirt. It requires intelligence. Now, of course, this is made by a human being, but you take something in the nature and the concept applies. So if there's two things you can find absolutely, is intelligence and existence.
Thank you for coming back to me. I just wanted to say, really thinking about this whole point of view, I just had an emotional response to it, and realizing a profound perfection in everything, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, this is the highest understanding.
Nothing wrong.
This is the highest understanding
at all, despite what my little personal desires might be. There's nothing wrong here. It all works beautifully as it's supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm starting to realize only just recently. Yeah. Thank you.
And as the mind becomes more and more attuned to this reality that Krishna is expounding for us, the more it starts to then relax. Hey, I can only do what I can do, but everything is being well taken care of. Now let's do one more mind-breaking exercise. Suppose you have a finger. Now please make your finger like this, even those who are behind the camera. Okay. Now suppose you don't see your finger. Okay. Now, does the finger know it's there unless I blow it? Now blow your finger. Notice what happens the moment you blow the finger. The finger becomes what? As though self-aware. Did you notice that? Right now, the finger doesn't know it's there. Look at this. It requires the presence of something else, and suddenly the finger goes, ah, I am here. Did you connect to that? So now, look at your thoughts. Your thoughts are exactly the same. How does your thought recognize it's there? Just like the finger requires the gust of wind to become aware that I am here, in that same way, your thought requires the presence of awareness to recognize I am here. You can take the same thing to a word. A word is only relative to the context of the surrounding words. The word large mosquito, large planet. The word large changes based on the context. This is why we have like the yin-yang symbol. The yin and yang symbol, if you saw, there's two fishes, right? And that's those two fishes, they are securely inside the one. So now the one half of the fish, the two just means infinite, but that infinite is securely within the one. So now that one fish that you see, the one side, it has the black. So the white fish has the black, and the black fish has the white. So that means I only see the white, but whenever I see the white, what is secretly inside the white? And when I see the black, what is secretly inside the black? The white. So this yin and yang symbol also wonderfully communicates the nature of this reality. Where I see one, there's the whole is right then and there. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.